put this video up just to add to Black Belt Barrister's video when it came to retesting of elderly people. Now, this is a growing issue, and I'd like to thank Black Belt Barrister for addressing this and putting this video up. And I just wanted to add some information to it. And the reason why I'm in a position as a driving instructor to say it is because I'm also a medical assessor. I work for an assessment company or a charity called Hearts Ability based in Welwyn Garden City. We have a few centres, Dunstable, Watford, Harlow, and a new one hopefully opening up fairly soon in East London. Now, I work with an occupational therapist to assess a person's ability to drive, and we get sent clients from DVLA, TfL, DFT, professional healthcare workers, doctors, GPs, consultants, specialists, and case handling companies for insurance. And we assess everything from 16-year-olds with learning disabilities that the DVLA haven't even issued a provisional license to because they have concerns that they may not be safe to drive, all the way up to elderly people that have brain diseases, for instance, or age-related decline. The spectrum is huge. Traumatic injuries, amputations, things like that. And we will basically try everything we can to get that person on the road. We will basically show them different types of adaptations. So, for instance, things like this. So if the person can only use one arm, they use that. It's a remote control. It has the indicators, the horn, the wipers on there. If the person is no longer able to use their legs effectively or safely, then they can use a hand control, okay, which is an accelerator or a brake. It could be if the person's had a stroke and they can't use the right side of their body. We will then show them a left foot accelerator. So the left pedal becomes the accelerator, and therefore the right pedal becomes the brake. Now, these are some of the ways that we can keep people on the road, but things that we can't help, unfortunately, as things currently stand, is cognitive issues. And this is what I wanted to add to Black Belt Barrister's video. Yes, eyesight is a concern. Also, just to add to eyesight is also a visual fields deficit or issue. So that's done with what's called the Esterman's test, which is, some of you may have done this when you've been at the opticians, where you put your head against a machine, there's a little white LED that turns on every now and then, and you have to click a button to say that you've seen that button. Now, that's not actually to do with your eyesight as such. That's actually to do with the way your brain processes information. And somebody with a visual fields deficit may not see things in certain quadrants. So, for instance, as I'm looking at you now, at 12 o'clock, somebody with a visual fields deficit might not see anything here. This is just completely black, and it's to do with the way the brain processes rather than the way the eye actually sees. So we do an eyesight test with the person, but we also normally ask for an Esterman's test as well. What we will then do is a cognitive assessment, and I'm not going to say what type of assessment batteries we use, because otherwise anyone that's watching this will then know what's homework to do before coming for an assessment. But these assess the way the person's brain works, and it's things like multitasking ability, so divided attention, memory, problem solving. It could also be basically the way they see things behind other things. And again, I'm not going to go into detail, but that's all done on that cognitive. The person will then get a score, and then from that we can see whether that person's likely to do well with driving or not. Once we've done that, we will then do the driving section. Now, with the drive, I am not a driving examiner. It is not a driving test. I do not care about bad habits. As long as the person is safe, in control of the car, and legal, that's all I care about, okay? If the person's got bad habits, as long as it's ticking off those boxes, it's not an issue. If the person wants to listen to the radio during the assessment, I don't mind. It's not a problem as long as that person feels comfortable and safe and relaxed. That's what I'm more concerned of. I want them to try to not think of it as a test. Now, along that route, hopefully we don't see any issues and they basically pass the assessment. But along the route, if we do see that there are issues, we will pull that person over and say, look, I've seen this issue and I want you to address it. And I might draw some diagrams. I might tell them how to address that fault. And then we want to see that that person's being able to adapt and learn from that. Now, they might come up to that second situation and they repeat the same process. I will then pull them over again and say, look, remember, we mentioned this before. I need you to address this issue because it is a concern. Then, when we come up to the same situation again, if they've not been able to adapt, then we can see there's a cognitive issue there. Again, we will normally tally this up with the cognitive in-office testing, and then we come to the conclusion, unfortunately, it is no longer safe for that person to drive. But we will give them as much of a chance as we can. It's not the driver fault or minors or major faults, serious dangerous faults that you get on the driving test. Now, if the person has a brain disease, so Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, Huntington's, what we will do is actually ask the person to come back periodically. It may be a year's time if the scores are good. It may be 6 months, it might be 3 months, it might be a month. But what we will also do when we see them on the second assessment is compare the first assessment to that one, so we can see if there is a decline in cognitive or physical ability. If it's physical ability, we might be able to keep them on the road by using adaptations. If it's a cognitive disability, an issue, then unfortunately there's not much we can do. And then when we get to the point where we see, unfortunately, it's no longer safe, we have to take them off the road. And it's not something we want to do. We want to keep them on the road as long as possible. But that's where we come into play. So if you have a concern of somebody's driving, whether it's family, friends, neighbours, or somebody you've just seen randomly driving on the road, you can contact the DVLA. You can stay anonymous, and then the DVLA will send that person for a assessment. And that's where we will basically do what we do. So I hope this has helped give you a little bit more insight in sort of what services are offered out there. I've put a link as well in the description to show Driving Mobility, as well as the charity that I work for, so you can see basically where your local centre is. And if you have any questions or comments, please put a comment in the comment section below, and I'll help as much as I can. And just one more thing I wanted to add as well. For those that are thinking old people shouldn't drive, I have assessed somebody that was 102 and was a brilliant driver. They got their speed in, they took their corners perfectly, they were completely aware. My paper was blank, there was no issues at all at 102. So age ain't nothing but a number, as they say. I wish you all many happy safe miles, and I look forward to seeing you on the next videos.